The most dangerous enemy is not the man who hates you in public. It is the one who smiles in private, keeps his seat at your table, and quietly weakens your foundation while calling himself a friend. Today, you will learn how covert sabotage works, how to spot it early, and how to cut it out before envy poisons everything you are building. Most men are trained to watch for obvious threats: the loud enemy, the open disrespect, the direct attack. But that is not how your life usually gets derailed. It happens slower than that, colder than that. Someone close to you starts planting doubt, mocking your discipline, questioning your moves, framing your ambition as arrogance. They do not come with a knife in their hand. They come with a smile, a joke, a warning, a little concern. And because they already have access, you do not defend yourself until the damage is already done. That is how covert sabotage works. It hides behind friendship while draining your confidence, your reputation, and your momentum. In this video, you are going to learn the patterns, the psychology, and the strategy to neutralize people who want your downfall without ever admitting it. Most men think danger announces itself. They think enemies come loud, obvious, aggressive. They think betrayal looks like hatred. It usually does not. The most dangerous threat to your rise is often the person still sitting next to you, still smiling, still calling you brother, still acting supportive while quietly applying pressure to every weak point in your foundation. That is how covert sabotage works. It does not kick the door down. It already has a key, and that is why so many men miss it. They are prepared for war with strangers. They are not prepared for erosion from within. You buy locks for the front gate. You build discipline for the outside world. You harden yourself against public disrespect. But the strike that actually slows your ascent often comes from someone inside your circle who cannot tolerate what your growth reveals about them. Because when you elevate your life, you become a mirror. And a lot of people do not hate your success because it harms them. They hate it because it exposes them. It exposes their excuses, their laziness, their wasted time, their lack of discipline, their addiction to comfort. Your ambition becomes an accusation without you saying a word. That is why envy rarely introduces itself honestly. Very few people will look you in the eye and say, "Your growth makes me feel small." No, they will disguise it as concern, as humor, as advice, as caution, as just being real with you. And if you are not sharp, you will confuse sabotage with honesty. You will mistake resentment for loyalty. You will keep feeding access to people who are quietly rooting for your collapse. So today, we are turning the lights on. We are going to break down the hidden laws of covert sabotage, how it begins, how it hides, and how a disciplined man neutralizes it without drama, noise, or emotional leakage. Because once you see these patterns clearly, you stop taking betrayal personally. You start treating it strategically. And that begins with the first law. Chapter 1. The anatomy of envy. Human nature is not fair. People love your potential when it is still hypothetical. They support your dreams when they sound distant. They clap for your goals when failure still seems likely. But the moment your progress becomes visible, the emotional climate changes. Because now it is real. Now your discipline is no longer a conversation. It is proof. And proof is painful to people who have been negotiating with their own weakness for years. A man can sit beside you comfortably as long as he believes you are on the same level, same habits, same fears, same excuses, same ceiling. But the second you start separating from the pack, you trigger comparison. And comparison is where hidden resentment is born. Here is the brutal truth. They do not hate your success. They hate that your success highlights their laziness. That is the pattern interrupt most men need, because too many men personalize covert sabotage without understanding the mechanism behind it. It is not always about you as an individual. It is about what you represent. You represent discipline they refused, standards they abandoned, risks they were too afraid to take, growth they kept postponing. So when you rise, they feel exposed. And weak people do not always respond to exposure with admiration. They respond with subtle resistance, not because they are powerful, because they are ashamed. That shame becomes envy. And envy rarely attacks head-on. It moves sideways, it smiles, it delays, it questions, it minimizes, it mocks, it poisons the air around your momentum. This is why the first stage of mastery is not becoming paranoid. It is becoming accurate. Not everyone in your circle is against you, but not everyone in your circle can psychologically survive your evolution either. That distinction matters. A strong man can celebrate another man's rise because he is building his own. A stagnant man feels threatened by movement because it reminds him he has none. Watch what happens when your standards sharpen. You stop wasting time. You become more selective. You take your work seriously. You stop laughing at your own potential. You stop living for approval. The wrong people read that as betrayal. Why? Because your old version was convenient. Your distracted version was easy to control. Your insecure version was easy to outshine. Your available version was easy to use, but your focused version, your disciplined version, your harder-to-reach version, that version disrupts the social contract they had with your weakness, and that is when sabotage begins to wear a friendly face. But it still is not always obvious. Because once envy enters the room, it rarely speaks in its own voice. It usually borrows the language of concern. And that is where the next trap begins. Chapter 2. The concern disguise. Covert saboteurs almost never say, "I hope this fails." That would expose the venom too quickly. Instead, they say things like, "I am just trying to be realistic. You know the odds of that working are low, right? I am only saying this because I care about you. Maybe you're moving too fast. I am just playing devil's advocate." Listen carefully. Real concern helps you see clearly. Fake concern makes you doubt yourself. That is the difference. A loyal person may challenge you, yes, but their challenge creates structure, precision, improvement. They sharpen your blade. A covert saboteur does something else. He injects hesitation. He wants your energy split, your confidence diluted, your momentum interrupted. He does not need to stop you directly. He only needs to make you second-guess yourself long enough to slow your rise. That is why the concern disguise is so effective, because it lets envy hide behind morality. Now the saboteur is not negative. He is responsible. Now he is not insecure. He is protective. Now he is not planting fear. He is just being honest. But watch the pattern. Every time you bring up a new move, he brings up risk before he brings up possibility. Every time you show progress, he mentions what could go wrong. Every time you step into something bigger, he drags your attention back to failure, not to strengthen you, to contaminate your internal state. You have seen this man before. You tell him you are launching a new business. He does not ask about the model. He talks about failure rates. You tell him you are locking in, training harder, building discipline. He jokes that you are becoming obsessive. You tell him you are distancing yourself from distractions. He says you are changing too much. Notice what is happening. He is not responding to the quality of your move. He is responding to the discomfort your move creates inside him. That is why weak men often call your evolution extreme, because moderation is the religion of people who never intended to transform. And if you are not sharp, you will confuse sabotage with honesty. You will mistake resentment for loyalty. You will keep feeding access to people who are quietly rooting for your collapse. Covert sabotage is dangerous because it does not always wound your body or your bank account first. Sometimes it wounds your certainty. And once a man loses certainty, the rest becomes easy. Because once you start doubting your own instincts, the next attack lands even cleaner. It comes in public, wrapped in laughter, disguised as a joke. And that is where we go next. Chapter 3. The Public Humiliation Jab. This is where covert sabotage stops whispering and starts performing. Not openly, not enough to look guilty, just enough to lower your status in the room. The public humiliation jab usually arrives disguised as humor, a slick comment, a backhanded joke, a story told with just enough truth to embarrass you, a casual remark that makes the group look at you differently for 1 second. That 1 second matters, because social power is not only built through what people say about you directly, it is built through the emotional frame people attach to your name. And saboteurs understand that, so they test your position in the group with laughter. Not because they are funny, because jokes are plausible deniability. If you react, they say you are too sensitive. If you stay silent without awareness, they assume the move worked. If the room laughs, they gain social ground at your expense. A weak man hears the joke and thinks, maybe I am overreacting. A strategic man asks a different question. If it was just a joke, why are you the only one not laughing? Because now you are no longer evaluating the words, you are evaluating the intent. And intent reveals itself through patterns. Does this person only joke at your expense when others are watching? Do they bring up your old failures right when your status is rising? Do they make you the punchline the moment attention shifts toward you? That is not humor. That is social positioning. They are trying to make sure your growth never fully changes the hierarchy in the room. Maybe you start earning more. Maybe you become more disciplined. Maybe people begin respecting your presence more. So what does the saboteur do? He reaches for your image. He reminds everyone who you used to be. He keeps dragging your current identity backward because your evolution threatens the version of reality where he felt safe. This is why so many men mishandle these moments. They either explode emotionally or they laugh along while dying inside. Both reactions cost you. The emotional explosion gives the saboteur exactly what he wants, proof that he can control your state. But fake laughing along teaches the room something dangerous. It teaches them that disrespect is tolerated, and once disrespect is tolerated, it multiplies. So what is the strategic response? Calm interruption, minimal words, no emotional spill. Sometimes a slow look is enough. Sometimes a clean line is enough. Interesting joke. Say that again. Explain what you mean. We are not doing that. Notice the pattern. You do not defend yourself for 5 minutes. You do not launch a speech. You do not entertain the frame. You make the moment heavy, because covert aggressors thrive in lightness. They rely on speed. They rely on blur. They rely on everyone moving on before their intent is examined. Your job is to remove the blur. A man who can calmly stop a disrespectful joke without emotional chaos becomes harder to test. His silence becomes expensive to violate. And once people realize you will not play the clown to keep the room comfortable, the quality of behavior around you changes. Because public jabs are never just about humor. They are rehearsals. They are testing how much status can be taken from you without resistance. And if that behavior continues unchecked, it evolves into something even more poisonous. Because once a covert enemy sees he cannot easily shake your confidence, he often shifts targets. He stops attacking your emotions. He starts attacking your reputation. If you are done being easy to read, subscribe and keep sharpening. Because once you see this next pattern, you will never hear certain conversations the same way again. Chapter 4. The Strategy of Isolation. A direct enemy fights you. A covert enemy edits the room around you. That is the difference. He understands that destroying your image can be more effective than confronting your face. Because if enough people begin to see you through a distorted lens, he no longer needs to defeat you personally. The environment starts doing the work for him. This is the strategy of isolation. And it almost never starts with a blatant smear campaign. It starts with tone, a suggestion, a raised eyebrow, a little concern dropped into the right ear. He has been acting different lately. I do not know, man. Something feels off. I am not saying he is arrogant, but success has definitely changed him. He has been distant. Just watch how he moves now. Half-truth, half-intuition, maximum damage. That is how reputation gets poisoned. Not with a clean accusation, with a dirty atmosphere. And the reason this tactic works is simple. Most people do not verify. They absorb. They hear something twice. They start feeling it. They feel it long enough. They begin treating it as truth. This is why covert enemies do not always fight your actions. They fight the story attached to your actions. You become more selective. They call you arrogant. You become more disciplined. They call you obsessive. You stop tolerating disrespect. They call you difficult. You protect your time. They call you selfish. Do you see the pattern? They take your strength and rename it until weaker minds start distrusting it. That is not random. That is narrative warfare. And weak men lose this war because they are too busy defending their intentions. But the world does not respond to intentions. It responds to patterns and perception. That means you need to become aware of relational drift. Watch for sudden coldness from mutual friends. Watch for changes in group energy that arrive without direct conflict. Watch for people becoming weirdly formal, distant, or guarded after someone else has had private time with them. Those shifts matter because they often tell you a conversation happened before you ever hear the words. And here's the twist most men miss. They are not fighting you. They are fighting your reputation. That is the real battlefield. They know that if they can make people question your character, your confidence becomes heavier to carry. Now every room feels slightly altered. Every interaction has static in it. Every alliance becomes less stable. That pressure is intentional. A covert saboteur wants you emotionally exhausted, over-explaining, chasing clarity, trying to clean up smoke with your bare hands. Do not do it. The more desperately you run around saying, "That is not true," the more reactive you look. And reaction is expensive. A strategic man does something colder. He watches, he maps, he notices where the narrative starts. He notices who changes after contact with whom. He stops assuming confusion where there may be design, because once you suspect hidden movement, you need more than intuition. You need proof, not courtroom proof, behavioral proof. And that is where the silent audit becomes one of the most powerful tools a disciplined man can use. Chapter 5. The Silent Audit. Most men confront too early. They feel betrayal, then rush to expose it. They accuse with incomplete evidence. They create noise before they understand the structure. That is how saboteurs escape. Because a covert enemy survives on ambiguity. He wants the situation messy, emotional, unclear. So do the opposite. Get clinical. The silent audit is simple. Instead of arguing with suspicion, you test behavior. You stop asking, "Do I feel something is off?" You start asking, what happens when information moves through specific people? This is where emotional men panic and disciplined men take control. If you suspect someone is leaking your business, poisoning your image, or quietly working against you, do not announce your suspicion. Reduce access. Change what each person knows. Track where your information travels. That is how you map loyalty. And one of the cleanest ways to do this is the controlled disclosure test. You give different people, slightly different pieces of harmless information. Nothing destructive, nothing reckless, nothing that creates real damage. Just enough variation to trace movement. One person hears you might be considering a new project. Another hears you may be leaving a certain group. Another hears you may be leaving a certain group. Another hears a specific timeline. Another hears nothing at all. Then you wait. No speeches, no confrontation, no hint that an audit is happening, just observation. And suddenly the fog begins to clear. The rumor comes back with a detail only one person had. A mutual friend starts reacting to something you never publicly shared. A certain narrative keeps appearing from the same direction. Now you are no longer dealing with vibes. You are dealing with patterns. This matters because hidden enemies are strong only while hidden. Once their pattern becomes visible, their power drops fast. Here is a simple example. You tell one friend, privately, that you may be stepping back from a business collaboration next month. 2 days later, someone unrelated asks why you are burning bridges. Now you know something. Not everything, but enough. Enough to stop speaking loosely, enough to close gates, enough to stop giving trust where there is no evidence of discipline. The silent audit also reveals something deeper. Sometimes the leak is not one dramatic traitor. Sometimes it is a weak person with a loose mouth. Someone who is not malicious, just undisciplined. That distinction matters because not every threat requires war. But every threat does require adjustment. This is the law. Trust is not measured by history alone. It is measured by how people handle access. Some men mistake long friendship for proven loyalty. That is a childish mistake. History means someone was around. Loyalty means they knew how to carry your name, your absence, and your private reality without turning it into social currency. Those are not the same thing. And once the silent audit shows you who is careless, who is envious, and who is quietly compromised, the next move becomes unavoidable. You do not argue. You do not announce betrayal. You do not stage a dramatic purge. You remove with precision. And that is where the next phase begins. Chapter 6. The surgical removal. Once you identify a saboteur, most men make the same mistake. They want a scene. They want the confession, the confrontation, the dramatic message, the final speech that proves they finally see through the mask. Do not do it. A covert saboteur feeds on emotional theater. He wants chaos because chaos creates cover. He wants the story to become noisy, public, and messy enough that his behavior can disappear inside the confusion. So you do not give him that luxury. You do not give him a grand exit. You just give him a closed door. That is the principle. Surgical removal is not revenge. It is controlled withdrawal of access. Less time. Less information, less proximity, less emotional availability, less reach into your private world. You stop explaining your moves. You stop inviting them into new plans. You stop giving them chances to study your timing, your pressure points, your relationships, your ambitions. And most importantly, you stop trying to be understood by someone committed to misreading you. That is where many men still bleed. They keep talking because they think clarity will fix the problem. But hidden enemies do not suffer from lack of information. They suffer from corrupted intent. So more explanation usually makes you weaker, not clearer. You say more. They gather more. You reveal more emotion. They measure more leverage. No, when the pattern is confirmed, the strategy changes. You become polite, brief, unavailable, not rude, not explosive, not theatrical. Cold doors, calm tone, no fuel. You decline invitations. You delay responses. You stop volunteering access. You reposition yourself without announcing the reposition. Why? Because the highest form of boundary is not a speech. It is structure. A man with structure does not need to keep repeating what he will no longer tolerate. His life starts enforcing it for him, and sometimes this removal will trigger one last test. A guilt message, a strange joke, a passive-aggressive remark, a sudden wave of fake warmth. That is not reconciliation. That is access trying to get reinstated. Do not confuse familiarity with safety. A snake does not become harmless because you recognize the pattern of its movement. You still do not pick it up. This is where discipline matters more than emotion, because the urge to keep the peace has destroyed a lot of strong men. Peace is not keeping poison in your circle so nobody feels uncomfortable. Peace is knowing the poison no longer has a path into your life. And once you master removal without drama, a deeper question appears. What do you build after the cut? Because power is not just knowing who to exclude, it is knowing who deserves proximity. And that is exactly why the next rule matters more than the first. Chapter 7. The untouchable inner circle. A lot of men clean out the wrong people, then make one more mistake. They refill the space too quickly. They get lonely. They get nostalgic. They miss history. So they confuse familiarity with alignment and let the same type of energy back in wearing a different face. Do not rebuild like that. Your inner circle should not be built on who knew you first. It should be built on who can survive your growth without needing to diminish it. That is the standard. History matters less than trajectory, because some people share your past but not your direction. And if they do not share your direction, they will eventually resent the speed required to stay near you. An untouchable inner circle is small by design, not because you are antisocial, because access is expensive. The right people do not get nervous when you win. They do not become sarcastic when you get disciplined. They do not need to humble you every time your presence gets stronger. They do something rarer. They stabilize. They challenge you without humiliating you. They correct you without poisoning your confidence. They keep your name clean when you are absent. They know how to hold information without turning it into entertainment. They are not addicted to gossip, envy, urgency, or social games, and you can feel the difference. Around weak people, your nervous system gets noisy. You start editing yourself, explaining yourself, managing strange energy. Around aligned people, your focus gets sharper, your standards get stronger, your ambition breathes better. That is how you know, not by charm, by effect. Ask yourself a harder question. Who becomes more disciplined when they are around you? And who becomes more reckless? Who respects your time? Who constantly reaches for unearned access? Who can handle your silence? Who panics when you become less available? Who celebrates your next level without needing to remind you where you came from? Those are the real filters, because your circle is not just company, it is climate. And no man becomes dangerous in the right way while living in the wrong climate. You cannot become sovereign in a room that constantly rewards weakness. You cannot build a fortress while entertaining people who love open gates, so rebuild carefully. Choose men with restraint, men with standards, men whose loyalty is not loud but proven, men who do not need your collapse to feel balance in themselves. That kind of circle does not make you soft, it makes you untouchable. Because now your energy is no longer leaking into people committed to misusing it. Now your focus compounds, your reputation stabilizes, your judgment sharpens, and that is where the transformation completes. Final form, the man they can no longer play with. The final lesson is this: the goal is not paranoia, the goal is precision. You are not supposed to walk away from this video distrusting every smile. You are supposed to walk away seeing more clearly. A weak man keeps learning the same lesson because he keeps giving access to appearances. A strategic man watches patterns. He does not need betrayal 10 times. Once is enough data. Twice is enough structure. After that, the door closes. He no longer begs to be understood. He no longer over-explains his standards. He no longer keeps people close out of guilt, pity, nostalgia, or fear of looking cold. He understands something most men learn too late. Every person in your circle is either reinforcing your nervous system or corroding it, either sharpening your discipline or softening it, either protecting your name or quietly taxing it, either aligned with your rise or made uncomfortable by it. And once you understand that, your whole way of moving changes. You speak less, you reveal less, you observe more, you test quietly, you choose slowly, you cut cleanly. No rage, no spectacle, no need to announce that you finally see through the act. Because a man who truly understands hidden envy does not become louder. He becomes harder to reach. He stops handing his inner world to people who have not earned it. He stops confusing old access with present loyalty. He stops trying to save relationships built on concealed resentment. He becomes composed, measured, difficult to manipulate, difficult to bait, difficult to study. That is power, not revenge, not noise, not proving anything to people who already revealed their nature. Real power is this: you can smile back, stay calm, see the dagger, and still never give the hand holding it another inch of your life. Remember that. The loud enemy is easy, the smiling one requires discipline. But once your eyes adjust, the mask stops working, and when the mask stops working, the game changes forever.